I want to take you on a little bit of a journey, and it starts here. This is in Bolivia. This is called Mount Sajama. It's the highest mountain in the country of Bolivia. Now, how many people here have ever spent a night inside a tent? If you've ever slept in a tent overnight, raise your hand nice and high. Look around the room. I mean, just about everybody, right? Now, how many people here have ever spent a bad night in a tent? Bad night in a tent? Yeah, it's the same question, in case you've never been in a tent before. Well, I want to tell you not about a bad night, but a terrifying night that I spent when I was here. Like I said, this is Mount Sajama, 21,463 feet above sea level. We'd made a day to get into base camp, another day to get up to high camp, and it was right about there where we were. And we were going to make it was from here that we were going to make our final push for the summit. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're one of these professional mountain climbers who then does speeches. On the contrary, I just signed up. In fact, I asked John, our lead guide on our expedition, I said, John, what would real climbers call guys like me who just sign up? He says, well, some would call you a tourist. And I was like, you know what, that fits, because tourists are in places they're not supposed to be, right? And I should not be at 18,000 feet. Well, there's not really much to do at high camp except get into your tent and get to sleep. Because at 2 in the morning, you've got to get up, get your gear on, and start your way towards the summit. The only problem is Sajama. It's just legendary for its high winds. And tonight it's living up to its reputation. Because as you get into your tent, I want you to imagine that there you are. The Atacama Desert lay a few thousand feet below you. You all know what it's like to get into a tent. But this tent, as you get in, it's sort of like getting onto this table perched on the side of a mountain. It's precarious. You don't know if it's going to hold you. And as you lay down, this is what you hear. And the tent is just shaking and moving and rattling. And this is really freaking me out, right? You're already kind of freaked about the day ahead, and you're nervous and you're scared. And I remember thinking the same thing you'd be thinking, right? We're going to blow off this mountain tonight. And I'm wondering, what's that going to be like? Rolling down the side of this mountain inside this tent in the dark with another man. I was telling this story, and one woman in her 60s put up her hand in the audience. She said, oh, count me in. It's like, I don't know that's how you want to go. But anyway, so what did I do for some reassurance? I turned to John, my leader, who was sharing the tent with me. And I'm like, hey, John, any chance that we might blow off this mountain tonight? And John, like good leaders, he reassures me, and he says, no, he says, these tents are built for this. So feeling only a little bit better, I resumed the fetal position, only to see John get up on one elbow, open the flap of the tent, stick his head out into the night and turn it on, and just to see that the other tent was still there, right? And I see him do this, and I'm really freaked. At this point, I even remember reaching underneath my sleeping bag, groping the floor of the mountain until I found a rock underneath the tent, and I just grabbed onto it and held on for dear life. Now, I knew this wouldn't keep us from blowing off the mountain, but I just wanted a reference point. Were we moving? And it was at that moment I asked myself that question, what am I doing here? And how did I get into this? And maybe you've had those days in HR, right? How did I get into this? Well, we finally drift off to sleep, and it's hard to sleep at high altitude. And we're awakened by the sound of Charlie's voice. Charlie's the cook on the expedition. We hear him outside, 2 a.m. Senor John, we have a problem. I mean, this is not what you want to wake up to, right? At 18,000. We're like, what is it, Charlie? We're in terrible sleep. You feel like you've got the flu. And he says, the stove, it's not working. It turns out we have all these problems, and it looks like we don't have enough water to drink because we didn't melt enough ice from the glacier, and this might jeopardize our trip. But we just figure, you know what, let's just go for it. So 5 of us, we lock in on rope together, and we start heading up 2:30 in the morning up towards the glacier. One of the climbers starts having problems, and it looks like he's going to have to go back down. And so they cut the rope and take him down. Leaving now just 3 of us left to go for the summit. Osvaldo, our lead guide from Bolivia, Jim Sibley, a guy from North Carolina, and me bringing up the rear. And as you're climbing in South America at high altitude, it's very slow. And I took some video after we'd been out for a few hours. You can see us here. That's Jim in front of me. That's Osvaldo in front of him. And I'd love to say it's more romantic than that, but it's like this for hours and hours and hours. And you can see how slow you go and how hard you're breathing. Well, after we climb for, maybe about, it's almost noon. We've been climbing a long time. Jim, he starts to get tired. He's starting to stop all the time. He's starting to, lean on his ice axe and say things like, this is tough. And go a little bit further and he'd stop again. I don't know if I can do this. And what's happening is the mountain is beginning to wear Jim down. And he's starting to doubt whether he can do this or not, except we have a problem. Because if Jim quits climbing now, it's over for everybody. We're down to our last piece of rope, our last guide, and if he quits, we all go back down. So what Jim needs now is motivation. In fact, what he could really use is a motivational speaker climbing right behind him. But all he has is me, right? But no, hey, motivation's my thing, and so I get to work. Come on, Jim, we can do this one step at a time. That's how you climb a mountain. We're almost at the top. Hours from now. And I keep urging him on, and this goes on for maybe about an hour. And all of a sudden, it's like somebody pulled my plug. You know that happens to you sometimes, 3:30 in the afternoon? Someone pulls your plug, and I had no energy. And then I'm the one leaning over going, this is tough. And now I'm stuck because I don't know if I can do this. Soon turns into, I don't know if I want to do this. But now I'm the one in trouble, right? Because if I quit, it's over for everybody. And I'm thinking, how do you go home and turn that into a speech, right? And so I remember being in this very bad place thinking, how do I get off this mountain without quitting? And it's like, it hit me like a lightning bolt. And I realized, that's it. I don't need to quit to get down. I just need Jim to quit. Because if Jim quits, it's like an honorable discharge from the mountain, right? I can still go home, and I can say, well, I would have made it to top if it wasn't for this guy. And so now what happens with the encouragement and the motivation from me? It starts to dry up, right? And when Jim says, wow, it's tough, what do I say? Sure is. Oh, you've been there. Well, the problem with knowing how to motivate, you also know how to demotivate, and I know what's keeping him going. It's me. He doesn't want to let me down. So I'm like about to kick those legs out from under him, and I'm like, hey, Jim. He's like, yeah, we're climbing. I'm like, listen, I'm not obsessed with the summit. If you need to go down, that's okay with me. He's like, no, must keep going. No, really, Jim, safety first. Anyways, this madness goes on for another maybe hour, and finally Osvaldo, sensing that Jim is at his limit, decides to call a meeting. It's hard to have a meeting at 20,000 feet because there's no place to sit. And so you kind of dig your crampons in, you dig your ice axe in, and you don't want to drop anything because just whoosh, it's gone. And Osvaldo gets on the radio and he says, base camp, he says, clients are tired. We're just going to decide now whether we're going to continue on or whether we're going to come back down to base camp. He hangs up the phone, and don't ask me why. I pull out my video camera and I just happen to film this moment. You can't hear anything, but you can see Osvaldo in the black balaclava. We are really high. And he is thinking long and hard about what to do next. I think Jim was wondering what's it going to take to get Osvaldo to take him down. I think I was wondering what's it going to take to get Jim to quit. And I think Osvaldo was wondering what's it going to take to get these two turkeys from here and to get them up here. Because what had gotten us to 20,000 feet was not going to be enough to get us to 21,460. More would be needed, but it wouldn't come from us. It was going to have to come from leadership.